This is the Introduction to SQL Programming course. We are still in session 5. In this video, we are going to look at optional column constraints. So the optional column constraints are null, not null, unique, primary key, and default. They are used to initialize the value of a new record. So the column constraint null indicates that null values are permitted, which means that the row can be created without a value in that particular column. So this is a way of actually controlling and managing our data. That way we get these constraints out of the box with the database. That way the developers don't need to go in and enforce these rules with the application code. The DBA or the data architect can control at least control the data and how the data is presented to the user in accordance with the business rules right at the database level. The column constraint not null indicates that the value must be supplied when a new row or record is created. So here, if a user does not insert some data that's required, that's not null, that error can be caught at the application level, at the code level, and a message can be sent back to the user that they must provide data or they're not going to be able to use that particular feature. So let's take a look at an example. Here we are again at our database command line. And this is just going to be one example. We can see here about the null values and some of the default values here. You can see that we do not permit null values for the project ID or for the project name. We are permitting null values for the begin date and end date, and that makes sense because at the time you can certainly create a project without knowing exactly the begin or the end date. You may not know the cost immediately. That can be added later. And we can see here with the timestamp that cannot be null, but we are adding here a default value for it. So interestingly enough, we can see here that the default is null when we don't allow a null value. That is it's something you have to just understand, and sometimes you have to look at both of these columns to really understand, is the default relevant in this case. Here we can see that the default is really only relevant here. For these yeses where null values are permitted, obviously here we can use this null here, but where they are not permitted, the default here is irrelevant. That's just one thing to look out for with database programming. Sometimes the default doesn't match up with the constraint. And stay tuned for our next video in this SQL programming course.